Mr. Chair, you are live.
Thank you and welcome everybody. Today is February 2nd. We're here for a special meeting of Board of Police Commissioners budget on this beautiful snowy and rainy day. And the thing just fell out, getting off my, anyway. Happy to be here. Let me first acknowledge that we are on Mi'kma'ki, the unceded and ancestral land of the Mi'kmaq people, and we all treaty people. So we'll start with the approval of order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Anything, Clerk?
Nothing to be added to the agenda.
Great, thank you. I call for a motion to approve the order of business as presented. Moved by Commissioner McDougall, seconded by Commissioner Blackburn. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none. Great, that passed. Going right into the thick of it. 4.1.1 Royal Canadian Mounted Police Halifax District Capital Expenditure Request. And Chief Gray, you can take it away whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So the presentation or the information package was forwarded before, and since our last meeting, acknowledging the board's desire to have more detailed information. I guess I will start the discussion to let you know that we have received further, with consultation with the Department of Justice as well as Public Safety, that it is the DOJ, Public Safety Securities Division, that is the appropriate contact point for requests for financial information pertaining to the RCMP service delivery model. The RCMP is a service provider, and the contract is between Halifax Regional Municipality and the province, so there is limited information that I, as a service provider, am permitted to provide. There's repeat information in this presentation, but certainly we did, after consultation, we were advised this by DOJ. So I won't repeat a lot of what we've already gone over, other than, we're aware that the Provincial Police Service Agreement, as I said, between the province of Nova Scotia is with how we operate and how we provide our service. The Provincial Department of Justice invoices Halifax Regional Municipality on a quarterly basis for these services. So my suggestion going into the future is any requests from the Board of Police Commissioners pertaining to our budget are potentially aligned with these the quarterly reporting. Under the PPSA contract, the Department of Justice overall cost of the RCMP policing and HRM is approximately $27.8 million. Our salary and other fixed costs associated to the district are managed by H Division Finance. So some such things as our buildings, purchases of our vehicles. So those are not out of the HRM budget, but out of the provincial budget. I have overall direct control over approximately $3.6 million for discretionary funding, and as stated previously, this includes overtime, fuel, equipment, kit and clothing, as well as other smaller items. Any upgrades, pardon me, in regards to buildings, vehicles, etc., are worked into the per officer formula that is established every year by the province. Stated before, the province retains a 70-30 cost share agreement with Public Safety. This includes Halifax Regional Municipality, which benefits from these the savings under the PPSA. So in essence, HRM pays 70% of the cost for the RCMP policing services. It's provided before the year-by-year budget analysis. Again, we don't get our budget until mid-April from the province, and as such, it's difficult to forecast or to give you those numbers. However, we can say consistently over the last 3 years, my budget has stayed relatively the same, articulated at the last meeting. But again, for your information, we are under budget this year at this point. For the most part, because of our smaller overtime budget, and we equate that to our leave restriction that we had for our membership, which was approximately 6 months. So we had full cadre and as such cut down on our overtime. HRM funds 183 regular members and 1 civilian member. As I said before, the total cost per officer for HRM is approximately $151,000, actually approximately $152,000. And that formula was presented before in regards to what that includes. Again, this is equated every year and includes salary, overtime, public service pay, repairs, equipment, uniform, training especially. Pardon me. The resource request that we previously submitted, I'll just briefly go over it again. We were conducting an HR assessment for several months. Within this evaluation, we're examining both regular members, public service employees, and other civilian employee positions, specifically their roles and responsibilities. Our audit has included several levels, including succession planning, civilianization, training, and efficiencies in operations. We will no doubt in the future be presenting an updated organizational chart with future HR requests. However, we've identified the most pressing and high risk as the one before you. There's no strategies available for us presently that would mitigate this. It's a staff sergeant that would fall under a direct report to Inspector Aaron Pepper as the administrative side. Be responsible for the oversight and governance of our professional standards, and this includes public complaints. Currently, we don't have a position that actually has that responsibility. It is run off of another operational staff sergeant's desk, and as such does not have the oversight or governance that it requires. Human resource oversight, again, probably one of our most pressing and high-risk areas within policing is ensuring that we have the primacy of operations and governance of our human resources. Inspector Pepper does not have an NCO, so a supervisor under her, and as such, as an inspector, that's the closest police officer she has reporting to her is a constable, and as such, the mass of her responsibilities go undone when she is not present. Business continuity plans, the staff sergeant would also be responsible for that. All of these responsibilities that I have listed are currently being shared amongst a number of senior NCOs, including Inspector Pepper, as well as MOUs. You know, most of our MOUs are outdated, and in the spirit of efficient and effective policing, they need to be examined. Consultation needs to occur, and they need to be updated. I know it's not lost on the board, the reporting requirements for our senior executives, specifically through to council, yourselves as a board, within the last year and a half, our Wortley recommendations, resource reviews, not to mention the Department of Justice. And so those pressures were added or are added to Inspector Pepper's position. We don't, as stated before, sir, we don't receive our budget letter until April 21. Therefore, from a forecasting perspective, we don't have exact figures, but I'll restate that the Department of Justice Public Safety and Securities Division is the appropriate contact for any further requests for more detailed information regarding our service delivery model. Pinning that chair, that's all I have.
Thank you, Chief. I just saw that the power went down by the North End area. So Carol, just be aware, close to you where you are, the power just went out. So if we see it pop out, we know why. Really quick before I go to members, O&M on the year-by-year budget. What's O&M?
Operations and management.
Okay.
So this is the. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to make sure that I had it right. Thank you. All right, so we'll go to Commissioner McDougall, please.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Janice, for that presentation. You mentioned that the Halifax Regional Municipality is billed on a quarterly basis. What are those quarters? Is it sort of a calendar year quarter or fiscal year or?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I would have to guess, but with the federal government, we are fiscal. We're a fiscal year, so it's April 1st to March 31st.
Thank you. And I have another question. In your discretionary spending budget, you list that you have direct control over 3.6 million. And that includes some items like overtime, fuel, equipment, kit, and clothing. While in the itemized total cost per officer, some of those same items are included. Can you kind of clarify what that difference would be?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'll remind everybody how complex this formula is. Yes, I do have discretionary funding when it comes to overtime. However, there's a base amount of overtime and fuel that is worked into the formula. Outside of that, that's at my discretion, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. That's all from me.
Okay, all right, cool. Commissioner Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I was wondering too about the fiscal year, and that was answered, so I'm good. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Janice. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Chief Kinsella the other day, and if you could just offer some insight. Because we can't really see too deep into this budget, I'm going to just ask you to give me your kind of just your perspective, I guess, on safe streets and speeding, any resources that might be going into tackling this. We have a really difficult period in our society right now. Frustrated people, frustrated drivers, a lot of speeding on a lot of streets. And so that's one area. The other is around if you can anticipate or tell us what emphasis might be in the way of community policing, community connections to officers, where crime prevention becomes a priority, where communities can get to know the officers that are dedicated to certain areas. We had that many years ago when I was on council. We fought very hard for it. It has changed, and I'm wondering if there is any turnaround to that kind of approach. I think that more than ever we need that approach in our communities, and yeah, just wondering where things sit in the discussions that you would be having on our behalf with the movers and shakers that make your decision on your budget beyond us. Thanks.
Thank you for your questions, and I might have to come back to the second one again for an update. But first and foremost, through you, Chair, when it comes to speeding, there are a number and other road safety issues. So I'll highlight that within Nova Scotia and Halifax District, because we fall under the same annual performance plan, road safety is one of our key elements. It has continued to be on our annual performance plan and will continue into the next fiscal. There's a number of initiatives under that annual performance plan and road safety that our district participates in, but specifically our dedicated traffic members perform their duties and their operations based on we would call it a CompStat model, meaning that it's based on intelligence and information in regards to where they do set up their road safety checks or their operations. I have to say that I know you were speaking about speeding, but road safety this January, we've actually increased our impaired driving statistics by 46%, which demonstrates that our traffic and our regular members are on the road and they're checking vehicles. And so I have to say that that's a significant uptick in our statistics. We have a dedicated communication strategy when it comes to road safety, and that continues throughout the year, but there is 1 week dedicated to speeding and restraining seatbelts, which I can't remember which week it is, but each week through the road safety calendar, it's highlighted through our communication strategy. We have some new equipment, and I apologize, I don't have it in front of me. I want to call them armadillos. And again, it's a tactic that's used to gather statistics when it comes to not just speeding, but also amount of traffic in an area. And of course, we rely heavily on our communities to actually report, you know, the challenges that they have or the road safety issues that they see. Without that, that is also taken into consideration when it comes to where we deploy our resources and where we don't. So I say rest assured, certainly our traffic members and our general duty members are dedicating their time in a targeted, intelligence-led policing model. And so when we have concerns like speeding or other road safety issues, those are targeted in this way as well. When it comes to, sorry, does that?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you needed me to reiterate the part around community policing and crime prevention.
I'll give it a stab.
Okay.
Okay, so the question through your chair. So community policing, again, this is crime reduction and community policing are a joined element of our annual performance plan. We do have dedicated community policing officers as well as school liaison officers that fall under our crime reduction and crime prevention section. So when it comes to budget asks relating to community, we have, I say, different strategies in regards to certain programs. However, specifically asking for more community members, we're not there. However, as I stated at the beginning, we have done a resource review that has included our community officers as well as our school liaison officers to ensure that we actually have the required number of police officers dedicated to that duty. We don't have the result yet, but surely they will be shared with the board once completed. I agree with you, Commissioner, in regards to dedication to our community is the utmost. Primacy of operations is also exceptionally challenging when it comes to our resource allocations. But again, in the best of both worlds, we wouldn't have to take from one to feed the other. Again, rest assured, our community officers are active police officers and they do their investigations as well. It's not only community liaison, even though that is exceptionally important. I want to state the obvious in regards to COVID, but it has had a significant impact on our engagement with our communities. We're challenged in that regard. The expectations of our communities and of our members has been greatly affected by their abilities to get out there, play sports with the kids, engage with our seniors. So we are trying to come up and are coming up with different strategies in regards to engaging them. Again, relying on our community to tell us what it is that they want and need in these challenging times, certainly in regards to the pandemic and what their expectations are. And we will continue to do our best to meet those needs.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, do I have any more time? I don't know how much time we have each time. I just haven't, yeah, I can go ahead. Okay, so a couple of comments, which it's great to hear. I just want to throw out there, similar to what I did with Chief Kinsella around the communication piece, and really that plays into this whole where we're at now with COVID. I live in the hope that COVID will end. We will have a normal again. It may look a little different, but we will have it. I think we're certainly here in Nova Scotia, we're going in the right direction. But I think that communications is an area that I personally would like to see a little bit more of an insight into what is happening and how are we approaching something around safety and traffic and speeding. Personally, I think that we need a wake-up call to the public around reminding them what harm can come from speeding. And we have more people now than ever who are watching TV, playing, looking at their electronic gadgets, whatever form it takes, and they're tuned into that. And I'm not sure, I think we have to be responsive and up to date on how we portray what the risks are to speeding for street safety. And I would like to see something a little more almost, and when you use the word graphic in these kinds of situations, I don't mean to be scary, but you kind of have to scare the pants off people to say, stop speeding. It kills people. It's dangerous. So I know I had asked Chief Kinsella, and I think that he had mentioned that he would talk with you guys around what kinds of things could we see an update here or somewhere on what is your communication strategy and where does the education piece come in. So I'll just throw that out there. You don't need to sort of, it's just something for the future. I think that would be, I'd be curious, and whether or not everyone else is, I certainly would want to have some opportunity to offer some feedback on being creative and how we approach education through communications. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. And oh my goodness, that's embarrassing. Sorry, it was my phone. I apologize, Chair. I apologize. Yes, so last week when Chief Kinsella was speaking about the Road Safety Communications Initiative, that is on our agenda to meet and discuss that, and certainly come back to the board with our comments and suggestions.
Thank you, Chief. Next, Commissioner Borden, then we'll go to Commissioner McDougall.
Yeah, just one quick question for Chief Gray. You mentioned that currently the RCMP is under budget and that there's a quarterly payment that is made. Is there a reconciliation process as part of that so that if there is an amount that is under budget, that is accounted for?
Thank you for your question, and through you, Chair. I would have to say there is a reconciliation, however, it's through the province, and so it's not directly from Halifax District to HRM.
Yep, and that's fine. Thank you.
Thanks. And Commissioner McDougall.
As a follow-up, thank you. When you mentioned, Janice, that you have Safety Week, a few other kinds of things that you communicate with the public about, I was wondering if there is a way for us to get a calendar of those weeks, or that to give us a sense of when that's coming out, so that perhaps those of us who can amplify on Twitter or through social media, just to add another voice to that.
Thank you for that, Commissioner, and through your Chair. Yes, I will forward that and get that information to all of you.
Thank you. And I believe that's it, other than me, just making sure that Commissioner Thomas didn't join. Nope, he didn't. So for me, a couple quick questions. When you say that you received the budget from the province, is that just pretty much the envelope of how much you have to spend, or do they give you more details on where they want to see some of that money spent?
Through the budget presented to through the district, there's very little when it comes to the discretionary funding. So my 3.6 million, however, the bulk of the budget actually goes to pay, goes to wages and that formula. From a provincial perspective, we get a little bit more detailed in regards to that information. But again, I have my discretionary funding is within my control.
Right. So just for an example, again, you might not know, but in the past, you may not know for this budget coming, but in the past, what does it look like when you get that budget from the province? Like, what are some of the type of things that they're giving you specific amounts to spend on?
We present our budget every year, our forecasted budget, to the province or to Nova Scotia RCMP Finance, so they manage my overarching budget. I don't deal directly with the province. I deal with our finance in H division, and so I don't have access to the bucket that is part of pay and comp and that formula. I only have access to the bucket that I'm allowed to spend on. So I don't know if that answers your question, but they don't give us direction as to what it's for, other than the piece of wages and pension, and those are already dictated prior to us getting it.
Right. And that was kind of my question. Like, are they dictating, we want you to spend X amount on, just because it was mentioned community safety, and X amount on communications? It's really, this is your bucket, operate as you're supposed to operate. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The only other piece, and you mentioned a little bit earlier with the O&M budget, and you have discretion over 3 point some. When, for us, and this would be a question for Jane and maybe even Chief Gray, but when, or even whoever has the answer, when it comes to the discretionary part of the budget, where is the legislation that directs that? Like who tells you that you have that amount, and then who are you accountable to that money with? Because I know it gets a little convoluted.
It's again, it's very complex. The Nova Scotia RC, so each division tells me what my budget is. They are told by the province what my budget is, or what the Halifax district would be in partnership with HRM. That's dictated, but I'm not told how to spend it.
Right.
It's just so that's where it comes from. The province dictates our budget.
So if we say we wanted to know for your 2021, you know, your 1.4, we wanted to know the breakdown of every dollar that you're spending. That is something that we would have to go to the province to get.
Yes.
Right. So you obviously you know what you're spending, but really you're, in terms of who you're accountable to for that money, it's the province.
Yes, we are the service provider. The contract is between HRM and the province. So I would suggest that you would go to HRM in regards to getting that information. They are in the contract with the province, but
Right.
that's just my awareness.
Right.
I don't know if what that process would look like.
Right. So Jane, maybe what would, not today, maybe for future, but if we wanted further understanding of where that three point sum and how it's being spent, how do we get that?
I think Jane is
thank-
just coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the committee. So I think, you know, a letter to the province, but I think that the bigger ask would be the larger amount, the 70% that we pay,
Right.
which we're projecting for 21-22 to be about $29 million. So similar to other conversations or requests we have of the province for mandatory contributions, it would be to ask them what's made up of that allocation.
From your knowledge, do you know if the commission has ever asked for that information in the past?
Not to the best of my knowledge, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we'll save that for another day, but maybe we should, as the commission for next year, next budget, you know, as long as we're all here, ask if we can get that information, and it's going to probably take more than that to get it, but I think we should have that information, and we'll save that for another discussion. Okay, that's it for me. I'm not sure if there's any follow-up from members. Oh, sorry. Chief,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I do have a follow-up, Chair. So in regards, so Ms. Lee Chow will be presenting at our presentation on February 16th, and she's from the Department of Justice. She's from the province. So questions pertaining to our budget and allocation would be appropriate to ask her at that time, and certainly the invitation went out today, and so if you anticipate certain questions that you can send in beforehand, that would help us
Right.
form our presentation properly.
If the board was to send a letter just asking for that information, would that help you in your presentation? Just would that be?
I don't think that the presentation is the place for that fulsome conversation regarding the budget. However, you know, she will be providing an oversight, and it might help with your understanding in regards to how to ask for the information.
Okay. All right.
Can I just one clarification
Yeah.
on that, Lindell, when you have a minute?
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you.
Nope,
Couldn't see where to
okay.
raise my hand. I guess I would just want to understand why we would want that information, and is that within, because I don't know that we could influence it with respect to our relationship with the RCMP, and I'd invite Ian perhaps or Andrea to comment on that. But I think just before, if we're going to have further discussion on it, I think going into that, you know, what would we be wanting to achieve by having that information?
From before anyone else weighs in, from my point of view, I look at it as, you know, we are, there's two pieces of it. There's the overarching, you know, $27 million, which is a lot of money. I think it's important that we understand, you know, not just where that money is going, but how it's being spent as much information as we can get. But when it comes to, thinking of the budgets that we get at council or even our HRP budget, even when the chief presents his budget, he does give us a more detailed understanding of, what's happening with overtime or what's happening with these types of costs. I'm not going to name them off, but different types of costs for our information. Obviously, we can't influence it. We can't tell the chief to spend more money on uniforms, but knowing that money, just more as a transparent piece rather than us trying to dictate how it's being spent is really what I'm thinking.
Okay, that's helpful to understand. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. I don't believe there's any other questions. So do we, and this is from our conversation last time, do we need to present a motion to forward this to council?
So I believe the motion from the last meeting was already to provide that. That motion is already given towards council. So I don't think you need an additional one for this. I think this could just be left to move forward to the next item.
But that was the, and again, I could be wrong. Wasn't that just HRP?
That was HRP, yes, sorry, but the RCMP budget, and this is where I'll defer to Janice on this, but the RCMP budget has a very different process for how it gets moved forward.
Right. And
I'll let Janice speak about that. So I do not believe you need a motion for this.
Okay.
I don't think I can comment on the motion or no motion, other than previously the resource ask was, I'll use the word supported, or I don't really know if that's the correct word, by the board when I presented it previously.
Okay.
Maybe I can jump in if it's of any assistance. I don't think that the board, Mr. Chair, that the board is required to make a motion to council on the RCMP budget. The board could make recommendations to council if there were things it wanted council to consider, but I don't think a motion is required for it to go before council.
Yep, if nothing's required, more than happy to proceed. So moving on to, so thank you, Chief, for the presentation. Moving on to 4.1.2, Halifax Police Proposed 21-22 Capital Expenditure Request. And these items, just for folks who might not be aware, the capital expenditures is just for FYI. We don't have any direct influence or oversight over the capital because that goes to council. So this is more of an information item for the board. So I'll let you take it away, Chief Casella.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the Commission. As the Commission is aware, HRP is subject to HRM's capital planning process. Similar to all other business units, representatives from HRP sit on HRM's capital planning committees to bring forward capital needs and discuss them as part of the municipality's overall capital planning process. Also, over the last number of years, HRP's capital needs have primarily encompassed key operational needs such as fleet and police equipment, and some updates to facilities. We have also over the years had larger requests that have come in, and I think that's what brought us here today to this update. This overview of the 2021-2022 capital budget situation includes both in-flight projects and new projects where funding is requested for the fiscal year. So the first slide that we have up is our in-flight projects. These are continuing projects year over year. They're evaluated through the committee work and ultimately through Ms. Fraser and her staff, and then up to the CAO and then to council to make sure that the policing services have the appropriate equipment replacement and the appropriate fleet replacement. And they are, as I said, ongoing and continuing year over year as the items included are generally perishable, such as vehicles. They all have a shelf life, and a number of our equipment, whether it be bulletproof vests or various firearms that are required, those things have a life that is evaluated, monitored, and replaced when required. Next slide, please. The three new projects, which really are asset renewal projects for existing specialized equipment in various areas, primarily revolve around IT and some facilities upgrades in regards to security monitoring, video. Generally speaking, for the first one, it is upgrades that are well due to ensure that we are keeping up with analog versus digital equipment, ensuring that video monitoring also has an accompanying upgraded and appropriate audio component, so we can ensure that we are providing the necessary oversight, whether it be in our custody facility or at our various off-site stations, whether it be central or otherwise, to ensure that our security monitoring is current and up to adequacy, for lack of a better term. The second portion there, digital communications upgrades. This particular item is in response to ever-changing technology externally, primarily as it relates to upgrades in telephone technology, with the move to 5G, ensuring that we have the availability and the equipment to be able to track and ensure appropriate and effective investigations and the gathering of information through the appropriate judicial processes. But that will assist us in staying current, and we'll upgrade our current equipment to appropriate levels to stay current with what's going on technology-wise in 2021 as it relates to communications. And the final request is for interview room recording upgrades. These again relate to asset renewals to ensure we stay current with our ability to record, track, itemize, prepare interview recordings for the court process, ensure appropriate disclosure, and that encompasses those costs there. So that is, in a nutshell, very high level of the projects that will be going forward through the HRM process, through the CAO to council for consideration. And I have Mr. Horton here if there's any other questions, and I am certainly available to take any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Start with Commissioner Blackwood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just had a quick question about the first slide, the in-flight items. I'm just wondering, is this a sort of a standing capital budget item? Is there always a yearly need to replace vehicles, or is that something that is done every couple of years? How exactly does that roll out?
So thank you, Commissioner, for the question, and through you, Chair, to the Commission. The short answer is yes. It is year over year. The item stays on the budget because the items are perishable. However, we don't replace the equipment every year, but there are equipment needs that are required every year. So earlier in the presentation, I did mention that we do evaluate the needs in that regard, and occasionally the amount is adjusted. It's the same for vehicles. We have both uniform vehicles that are all marked up with lights and sirens and all the necessary equipment. We also have plane door vehicles that investigators use to drive to do the tasks that they need to do. The plane door vehicles tend to last longer, so they're around and have a much longer shelf life. The uniform vehicles, as you can imagine, are subject to much greater wear and tear. They have a set, limit by kilometer and by usage. And the other thing we do with our vehicles in particular is we rotate them around to higher use areas to make sure that we're effectively managing our vehicles, and we get great assistance from HRM and the staff in Jerry Blackwood shop to make sure that we have a lot of eyes on it, to make sure that we're getting good bang for our buck in regards to how we use our vehicles and only asking for and purchasing what we need.
So there is a number of vehicles that are sent out to pasture every year.
Yes, there is. And they, like I say, at the end of their life cycle, they will be decommissioned and then new vehicles will be purchased.
All right. And so the amount that's in the capital budget, that's pretty much on par with what it has been in past years for vehicle replacement?
Generally speaking, I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but I can tell you that it doesn't fluctuate a lot because of what I would call the exceptional management of it by both staff at HRM and internally through Deputy Chief McCombs and our fleet people within HRP. So it's a good combination of what I would call, like I said, exceptional management to ensure that we're staying current and we're only using what we need.
And just out of curiosity, finally, when a vehicle is decommissioned, what process is used to dispose of it?
So again, we just recently went through our process. We've reviewed not only for vehicles, but also for police-related equipment, paraphernalia, shirts, pants, anything that is identifiable. But specific to your question, in regards to vehicles, they go through an extenuating decommissioning process, whereby all lights, sirens, police equipment, any identifiers that are used as police equipment to effectively do operational work are removed. Those items are recycled where they can and put on other vehicles that are coming in. If they can't be used for one reason or another, they're at end of life, then they will be destroyed and eliminated basically from the inventory. We also have a very stringent process where all decals are removed and all items of identification are removed. And generally speaking, moving forward, most of the police vehicles will not be put back into circulation or sold moving forward. There was a time when they were sold, depending on, the status of them. So we generally use the vehicles pretty close to end of life. They sometimes have value for parts, but we're very careful to ensure, and when I say we, the staff at HRM are very careful to ensure that anything that goes out is not going out as any kind of resemblance to a police vehicle.
Okay, and that's is that a fairly recent policy, or has that been a long-standing policy with HRP?
No, that's fairly recent, and I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but I can tell you that there is an evaluative process going on, quite frankly, nationally. I've had recent discussions with counterparts across Canada, and you may know that there was some information that came out of Bill Blair's office with the federal government, and it's a very concerning thing, and we are regularly monitoring for incidents where someone may be impersonating a police officer. And it's one thing to have things that kind of look like police paraphernalia, police equipment, police vehicles, and then it's quite another to have the actual thing. So we're all very in tune to it and committed to making sure that there isn't anything that is going to cause harm to the public or potentially leave the public to be confused. And it is recent. It is since the tragedy in April. We have all been committed to ensuring that we are closing any gaps that might exist.
Appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McDougall.
So thank you very much. First of all, for the presentation, and Lisa for asking my question. It was good to hear what you were asking about. I just have one question, and it's about new premises. I don't see any figure in the capital budget, and this is a budget that's projected to 2025. So I'm just curious about whether that's now been put on the shelf for a bit, or what's happened with that idea.
Thanks, Madam Vice Chair, and through you, Chair, to the Commission. So the presentation today was strictly to tell you what was going to be on the request for spending for this fiscal. As far as a new police building, we have ongoing discussions with HRM, and Deputy Chief McCombs has actually been meeting with HRM staff to have those discussions. I don't have the exact, maybe I do. Do you have the number? I believe the first installment for capital planning or budgeting for the new building is for the 2024-2025 year, and we have $1 million earmarked for getting started on the planning, the building. We're currently looking at various sites that might be of interest, and so that is definitely on the radar. And as you can imagine, it's a long-term project, and we also have planned for 25-26, so 2025-2026, $4 million earmarked. Now, having said that, all of these, items, it's pre-planning, it's in the future. Lots of discussion has to happen on those as we move through the years to ensure that, we're in line with HRM and council and yourselves as the board. But those items specifically related to a new HRM headquarters is definitely on the radar, and we are actively moving through the plans on that.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, it would be great if when we're out of COVID time, we're able to do a tour of the premises on Gottingen, so all commissioners can see the kind of limitations you're dealing with there, I would say, and the areas where the public are generally invited in. I know this is not necessarily capital budget for this year, but I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Commissioner Kent.
Sorry about that. Just having some technical problems here. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Commissioner Borden. All right, you're good. Thank you. So quick question, Chief. So two quick questions. One on the new 21-22 projects. Can you give an idea of the background around these projects and why they're needed now? And if you could just give a really quick background on how we got here today for these projects, because when folks look at it, they're going to wonder why this wasn't done in the past. And there was a process that happened that got there. And the other question I have is around the in-flight, because going back, and I had to make sure I wasn't thinking of something else, but back in 18-19 budget, we did approve we did approve for the fleet, and this was before your day, but it was still the budget, $1 million for fleet, and for the police service replacement equipment, 460. So what I'm wondering, and you don't probably have that information now, but when it comes to council, maybe Jane and Dan can work together, can we get an understanding of what those items are? Because if we're talking about police replacement, we spent $1 million in 18-19. That was put in the budget, and now we're looking at another 800. So I don't understand when it comes to the police fleet replacement, what, just a note in that period, what makes the need for another $800,000 worth of investment. But maybe there is a reason, and having that information would be helpful. And then, and you can, if you have a comment, Chief, you can, but I don't know if you'd have that information on hand. The other one is just the background of why we need to do these upgrades, mostly IT related.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And I'll give you a little bit of information on number 2, but to your point, we'll make sure that if there's anything further required, I can either get it for the board or I will ensure I have it for council. So just in regards to the new projects, they are all, IT special systems related, as I mentioned. And basically, all of these items have a shelf life for one reason or another. So, for example, the information around interview room upgrades. The last time any upgrades were made was in 2013. So we evaluate every year and try to ensure that we're keeping current with the times. And as part of the evergreening process with all of the equipment we have, we try to make sure that we use it to the extent that we can, as long as it's meeting our need and ensuring that we're doing, the appropriate business continuity. We don't bring it forward. We're at a point now with these 3 items that they have actually reached end of life or have reached end of useful life. The other example I'll use is around the communications piece, the move externally by cell phone providers and the technology that comes with 5G. We just don't have the ability to respond to the 5G environment. We're working in less than that, and we just need to stay current. So really, it's become a end of life issue where if we move forward, if we don't replace now, we will begin to see a diminutive effect on our operations going forward, whether it be security for the cameras. We have, lived with analog video for basically as long as we can. Part of the problem with that is it's still useful and it still works, but to get those items fixed and serviced, it's very difficult. So, and basically it's the same for the video recording. Without the upgrades, we just can't get the parts anymore. So it kind of becomes a defeating purpose. We have, maintained it for as long as we can, but we do need to stay current to ensure appropriate and effective business continuity. As far as number 2 for the in-flight, not all of that equipment is replaced at the same time. For example, we purchase bulletproof vests approximately every 5 years. They generally have a shelf life of 10. We can't replace all 500 plus bulletproof vests that are in existence at one time. So we're on an evergreening schedule that allows us to replace them when they expire. It's very similar for cars. We don't buy new, we don't replace the entire fleet every year. We replace the cars as we move along. I don't have the exact price of a new cruiser, but I would suspect, prior to installation of all the equipment, somewhere around $50,000. We have 60 plus uniform cars in the fleet. I don't have details, but I will get them for you in advance or at council to demonstrate what I believe is the appropriate process to replace as we go along. But it's similar to that in regards to the in-flight items. So hopefully that helps. Subject to any clarification, I'm happy to do that if you require it.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. So I would ask when you come to council, so again, looking at those two, the in-flight items and the amounts, and then going back to our 18-19 where the amounts were pretty much the same, getting an understanding of what happens between now and then, and why that's needed now would be very helpful for me. And I know with this year, budget year, and all the constraints that we're at, I think council would also appreciate that information as well. So with that, again, these are items that we don't really have any oversight and can't make recommendations other than say thank you for presenting it to us. I'm just gonna look at the chat to make sure there's nobody else. No one else is asking to speak. So again, thank you, Chief. That's it for that, and we'll move on, which I believe is to adjournment. And I lost my agenda.
Chair.
Yep.
I just put a note in there. I didn't know. I did find the information pertaining to the Armadillo traffic collector. I didn't know if you wanted me to provide an update on that or not.
More than happy, and this comes from a comment from a member wanting to see a picture of this armadillo. And because we have an efficient chief, our chief went and got the information. So we appreciate it.
Well, through you, Chair, unfortunately, I will not be providing a picture because, of course, these are discrete mechanisms that we use to gather traffic information. So if I showed everybody a picture of it, then that wouldn't be very helpful. But however, we purchased 2 of these. They're traffic data gathering devices. They're used, they have radar systems and they monitor traffic speeds and traffic counts as well. So the data can be collected unidirectionally or bidirectionally in one or multiple lanes, depending on where they're positioned. And they help us gather the data to see if there's places, so we can do an assessment, ensuring that our enforcement is being used in the most efficient manner.
Great. Any further comments from commissioners? Nope.
But does it look like an armadillo? I'm just curious as to where the name came from. Thank you.
Oh, Commissioner. All right. So with that, we're going to move on to the date of the next meeting, which is February 8th. So that is a regularly scheduled special meeting, if that even is a thing. And I will ask for adjournment.
Sorry, Lindell, was there another item about an update on POJ?
That's on the 8th.
Oh, that's on the 8th. Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
I move to adjourn.
All right. Thank you, adjournment. Everyone stay safe. If the power goes up, stay warm. Take care.
Thank you.